The Fortune Furniture International Expansion Case Study, at its core, identifies and subsequently analyzes a collective effort on behalf of Fortune's executives to expand into Western Europe, thereby creating more opportunities to bolster its international presence. In an effort to introduce readers to the presented issue, Quelch and Iswa have deconstructed both the internal and external elements which have contributed to Fortune's being, briefly provided an historical background of the company's humble beginnings, and highlighted the acquisition of subsidiary company Abilit. Subsequent to the introductory literature, the case study then addresses how Forge's CEO, Vasil Meria, and Chief Marketing Officer, Marita Petrescu, systematically analyzed the European furniture market and subsequently identified two viable destinations for expansion, namely Bulgaria and Poland, which will ultimately facilitate a more favorable introduction into the Western European market, thus securing long-term growth. Finally, in aim of collectively arriving at the most profitable conclusion, Petrescu, accompanied by Fortune Vice President Konstantin Senat and Abilit Vice President Alexandra Dobreva, thoroughly analyzed the geographic, cultural, and economic disparities between executing respective expansion initiatives into the two previously identified territories, and subsequently provided tabulated statistics to aid in making the most calculated decision. Before executing expansion initiatives, Chief Marketing Officer Petrescu, along with Vice Presidents Cernat and Dobreva, first needed to evaluate the determinants or deciding factors which would influence their successful implementations. A plethora of elements needed to be considered, more in-depth research was warranted, and a more aerial perspective was required in aim of arriving at the most calculated option. Having said this, first on the list of considerations was the Western European perception of the Fortune Furniture brand, as well as related customer attitudes or insights. Although Fortune Furniture's deliverables were favorably received by its Eastern European audiences, a completely opposite reaction was observed in reference to its Western European counterparts. Due to noticeable disparities in both culture and customer preferences, Fortune Furniture's Eastern European-made offerings were ridiculed and subsequently labeled, for want of a better term, as inadequate. In addition to this inconsistency, Fortune executives were also required to evaluate the company's market presence amongst major players and category killers, such as the ever-expanding IKEA brand within the Western European market. This proved to be a crucial step in synthesizing possible opportunities and subsequently identifying the most optimal strategy with respect to competing with more established companies. Finally, after considering both the cost and risk associated with expansion, Petrescu needed to evaluate the advantages and disadvantages of utilizing intermediary nations as stepping stones towards successfully entering the Western European region. Subsequent to identifying both Poland and Bulgaria as viable options, more comprehensive analyses needed to be conducted in aim of deciphering which destination would be most suited to facilitate profitable opportunities for Fortune's subsidiaries and consequently ensure Fortune's successful integration into the Western European market. Separate and apart from the obvious, international expansion initiatives can also be extremely beneficial if viewed from an internal perspective. Striving to expand into both foreign markets and territories not only provides businesses with the opportunities to interact with an entirely new customer base, it also prompts the sharing of intellectual property, whether it be for mutual benefit or otherwise, and also enables company culture and values to be marketed. Establishing operations in unfamiliar territories has the effect of promoting your business's unique method of operations, thereby introducing new business ideologies to foreign markets and potentially inspiring innovation. Additionally, as a result of the acquisition of an entirely new customer following and by extension market, businesses will be required to heighten their respective levels of productivity in aim of satisfying an increased demand for their products through enhanced production volumes. Furthermore, as production volumes increase, so too will the need for a larger, more competent workforce, thereby facilitating the creation of new employment opportunities both domestically and internationally. Moving forward, as businesses expand internationally, not only will their influence and market presence be boosted, but so too will their respective revenue streams. Successfully entering into new markets grants companies with the opportunity to address foreign issues, thereby inspiring an increased level of innovation with respect to research and development. As a result, new products are introduced to the market, and businesses acquire new mediums to which profit can be made. Lastly, foreign market entry presents the opportunity for decision makers to gain a better understanding of foreign business environments as well as customer preferences. Not only will the acquisition of this new knowledge enable businesses to become more culturally integrated and considerate, it will also enhance the business's level of relatability, thereby creating opportunities for foreign partnerships. Although Forta's expansion into the Western European market was forecasted to be exceedingly beneficial in the longer term, the company's executives were a bit reserved about implementing suitable initiatives due to two specific entry barriers. Firstly, as a result of the disinclination which Western European consumers possess towards Romanian manufactured furniture, and by extension, that of Eastern Europe, Marita Petrescu, along with Constantin Cernat and Alexander Lubreva, were initially somewhat skeptical and exceedingly cautious. To ensure a company's successful entry into foreign markets and subsequently maintain an adequate degree of relevance, it must first make certain that there is a demand or desire for its presence. While it remains constant that there is a universal demand for furniture, for obvious reasons, Western European consumers were not observed to possess a similar zeal for Fortune's deliverables when compared to their Eastern European counterparts, notably due to differing customer preferences. As such, this issue presented itself as Fortune's initial barrier to entry. Additionally, Petrescu also described the expansion into Western Europe as extremely risky. Separate and apart from the cost which Fortune was forecasted to incur, Petrescu stated that a small window of opportunity presented itself, and any inadequacies would eventually prove to be exceedingly detrimental due to the unfavorable probability that a similar opportunity would present itself in the future. In other words, Fortune's plans of expansion needed to be well calculated and appropriately timed. While these two variables were certainly the cause of great concern, great benefit was also forecasted to be derived from Fortune's expansion into Western Europe. In addition to a relatively large market, when compared to that of the Balkans, consumers in Western European countries such as France, Germany, and the United Kingdom possessed a great degree of disposable income, thereby creating the potential for Fortune's locations to be reasonably patronized, consequently materializing the company's aspirations of international expansion. In aim of making a more calculated decision with respect to Fortune Furniture's method of expansion, Marita Petrescu tasked Vice Presidents Constantin Senat and Alexandra Dobreva with developing a detailed report of how their respective subsidiary brands would enter both the Bulgarian and Polish market and subsequently weigh the pros and cons of each strategy. Within each report, both Cernat and Dobreva provided a robustly detailed breakdown of the different variables which would either support expansion into the aforementioned territories, and also those elements which were highlighted as deterrents. In addition to identifying these factors, both vice presidents also provided a numerical forecast of how the Fortune and Abilit brands would fare in both the Polish and Bulgarian markets, using either a branded entry strategy or a private label entry strategy. With respect to Cernat's Forte brand, it was observed that a branded entry into the Bulgarian market would yield the most benefit and profit, not only in terms of the forecasted market share measurements, but also with respect to the forecasted costs incurred related to marketing and R&D refinements to deliverables. It should be noted that the objective would be to identify which route would present itself as the path of least resistance, while simultaneously yielding the most profit for the Forte brand in the long term. Having said this, while the Brewer's Ability brand was forecasted to enjoy a seemingly enticing market share in the Bulgarian market if a branded entry was implemented, and an equally favorable total cost of product refinement if a private label entry was considered, data also revealed there to be both a pricing-based and a consumer preference-based barrier to entry, consequently labeling the Bulgarian market as an unfavorable choice. As such, Petrescu's and by extension Forte's most suitable decision with respect to the Abilit brand would be to implement a private label entry strategy into the Polish market to further secure the company's long-term objective of expanding into more lucrative territories.